What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with a preview for the John Deere Classic. I've already heard complaints about this tournament, maybe because there's such a strong field across the ponds, but I look at this field and I'm just like I'm in love, right? There's going to be a bunch of birdies. Sure, not nearly as strong as the Scottish Open, but it's going to be fun. It's the week before a major championship. The PGA Tour is headed to TPC Deere Run. It is a par 71 with plenty of course history. We have a lot to talk about. Let's not waste any more time. Let's jump straight into the cheat sheet. So if you are not familiar, this is the cheat sheet that I put together every week. It is available on dfsondemand.com. A lot to digest here. There are 5 guys priced over $10,000. And some of these guys have never been priced over $10,000 before in their lives, and they may never be priced at that amount again. Leading the way is Francesco Molinari, coming in off his win at the Quicken Loans. He won on the Euro Tour as well. So even my cheat sheet doesn't show how hot Molinari has been. The only knock against him here is that he's only playing this event to fulfill his... This is that new rule on the PGA Tour where you have to add like a new course to your rotation, a new tournament to your rotation every 4 years. It's the strength of field condition. So that's what he is fulfilling this week. That doesn't mean he's going to come out and just, hit a shot and withdraw. But it might indicate that this course isn't a natural fit for him or something like that, right? Because it wasn't already on his schedule or hadn't been for the majority of his career. Now, when you go down, DeChambeau and Zach Johnson are both very interesting. Zach Johnson, when you look for course history, look no further than this guy. I can flip over to course history here real quick and just show you. This is average DraftKings points down here in the bottom right-hand corner. Zach Johnson has played this 10 times since 2018. You can see 7 top 5 finishes, including a win, 3 seconds, 2/3, and a 5th. That is pure domination. When you look at this course, you don't need to be a long hitter. So I didn't mention this yet, but there's going to be a lot of birdies. This course sets up a lot like last week, but there's another par 5. The greens are usually a bit softer, so you can throw darts. Putting's a little bit easier. The fairways are very large. They're very generous. There's no water in play really anywhere off the tee. So this is a birdie paradise. We'll talk more about that later. But Zach Johnson, elite course history. But I think my favorite guy is Bryson DeChambeau. 9th place at the Travelers the last time he teed it up. Remember, he won a few weeks back at the Memorial. He's racking up these top 5s and top 10s all over the place, and he's your defending champion. I don't usually go for defending champions because I think it's a hard thing to live up to. It's not a knock against them in any way, of course, but it's tough to win back-to-back. And when you see someone do it, it's really impressive, like we saw. Brooks did it at the U.S. Open, which is even more impressive, but you get the narrative here. We'll talk more about Bryson DeChambeau in a second, but it's Joaquin Niemann whose price is really interesting, $10,400. And for those of you who have not figured him out yet, he's really, really good. So he has not qualified for PGA Tour stats yet. He actually does not have enough rounds played, but I do have his strokes gained numbers, believe it or not. So this is part of my new strokes gained visual. It's on DFS On Demand. There's multiple tabs here. I'm still kind of working through everything. I just threw this one together like 5 minutes ago. It's not pretty. It's down and dirty. But what this is you can change the number of weeks, but this is the last 10 weeks on the PGA Tour. So you can see it goes back to May 6th at the Wells Fargo Championship. Joaquin Niemann, this is in this field alone, the 5th best strokes gained total, 1.4. This is per round, okay, in 22 rounds. You can see he is top 3 off the tee. Let's see where he's at here. Top 5 approach. Falters a little bit around the greens, and he's about an average putter. His tee to green game, of course, spectacular, and strokes gained total as well. So just trying to point out, he's a big time player. Like, he deserves this price tag. He's knocking on the door of winning a golf tournament, and this certainly might be the week. Well, again, we'll talk about what it's going to take for the course, but I want to run back to the cheat sheet here for just a second. Steve Stricker. If you would have told me Steve Stricker was going to be $9,800 this week, and you would have told me that a month ago, I'd have been pretty shocked. But you can see it's kind of warranted. So he doesn't play much on the PGA Tour, plays a lot on the Senior Tour. But in his last 4 starts, and they're all pretty significant, or they're significant events, right? It's the Players Championship, it's the U.S. Open. No worse than a 32nd, and he's absolutely destroyed this course. He's a 3-time champion. You don't need to be long here. I'll be interested to see Stricker's numbers, but this, just like we talked about it another week where it was like, this is the week you have to play him if you're ever going to play Steve Stricker. This is also probably that case too. Kyle Stanley, though, I think is the guy who will hopefully go overlooked here. So Kyle Stanley has the same odds to win as Steve Stricker. Steve Stricker will probably be much more popular. Kyle Stanley a little more volatile, but I want to show you a few things. So again, I'm kind of all over the place here with this new visual because I'm trying to learn it myself. Kyle Stanley's got the 4th best strokes gained total in the last 10 weeks. He is actually gaining strokes with his putter, which is unheard of. Let me show you a little bit about Kyle Stanley here. And this is, again, another new visual that I have. So this is last week. Let's see if I can do this right here. This is last week, but I want to go to the John Deere Classic. And now this is historic, right? So I have not chosen a year. So this is all years. You can see Kyle Stanley gaining, what's that? The 7th most strokes gained, total wise, in the history of this event for him, right? So unbelievable off the tee, excellent tee to green. He loses them putting. And just to kind of show you what kind of player Kyle Stanley is, let me just pull up just Kyle Stanley. And we'll do it like this, right? We'll do it like this. We'll do all. Here we go. So here's Kyle Stanley, essentially gaining strokes, elite off the tee, elite tee to green, very good approach, bad around the green, and brutal putting. So what's my point here, Rick? Get to the point. My point is he is historically a brutal putter and very good in most other categories. And in the last 10 weeks, he's gaining strokes putting. I don't know if something has changed. I don't know if he's running hot, but I need to point it out to you because he's right here, and he's $9,700, gaining strokes putting through his last 18 rounds, and the same price as Steve Stricker, which I imagine is going to be pretty popular. Stanley has, let's see, an 18th place finish here in the past, and I actually think he's done better than that. Whoops, that was a misclick. Let's try Kyle Stanley. Here's Kyle Stanley, a 2nd place in 2011. He has really decent success here at TPC Deere Run. So going to be hard for me to avoid him. All right, that was a long-winded segment on Kyle Stanley. Let's knock out a couple of other of these guys here. Austin Cook playing well, two top 6s in his last 3 starts. Brian Gay, I think even with that 39th place finish last week at the Greenbrier, 4 of his last 5 starts prior to that were all top 20s. I think he's an option. If you're looking for course history, which I'm not solely a course history guy, but Johnson Wagner, 2 top 7s in the last 3 years. Let's see what else we have here. Anything interesting? Varner, you can try to ride that hot hand again, right? He, 5th place last week, kind of faded. He was the 54-hole leader, fades, but now you get him at $7,400. That's a pretty good price. Okay, I don't want to waste too much time on this cheat sheet because it's very straightforward, and we have a lot of other great things to talk about. So let's go to the tour stats, and let's talk about the stats that did correlate for this week. So again, if you're new, I run a regression model every week. It is the last 8 years of DraftKings scoring, the last 8 year of PGA Tour statistics, and we find out what stats are important for TPC Deere Run. This week is kind of no surprise. Birdie or better is up there for all weeks. It's way up there this week because it might be like 20 under par or more that wins this thing. Par 4 scoring, which is kind of a little interesting. That usually shows up more on par 70s. This is a par 71, still appeared. Putting average, believe it or not, how many putts you take per round. You could also probably look at strokes gained putting stats. But putting stats do come up here. That's where Kyle Stanley historically is going to hurt us. Molinari historically going to hurt us, but those guys have been obviously overperforming in that category recently. Bogey avoidance, I think, is the big one. And I think I heard Pat Mayo go into this a little bit, and I think it was Pat. Shout out to Pat if it wasn't, but I think it was Pat. So he mentioned something like birdie or better is always very important, but a lot of these guys who are big-time birdie makers are usually kind of capped out, right? Like someone who makes 6 birdies around doesn't instantly turn around and make 10 around this week, right? Bogey avoidance is key because it's those guys who were making a lot of birdies and making a lot of bogeys. They have a room to kind of expand. They have an opportunity to kind of reach their ceiling this week. So bogey avoidance, I believe he said it popped up on his model, popped up big time on mine as well. So you'll see it here. And the strokes gained approach was the one that that rounds out our top 5 here. So let's look at this. So birdie or better, a lot of names that we've seen week after week, right? It's Bryson, which is why I love him. Zach Johnson's actually up here, which you don't really see a lot or would expect from him, right? Sam Saunders played well last week. Harkins has made these, these Friday charges and weekend charges up their leaderboard. Kyle Stanley's up here as well. So you can see where this is going to end up putting me as far as my lineups go when we start to see the same names over and over again. Ryan Moore, Kevin Streelman, Ches Reavie, all very, very good par 4 scoring players. Bryson again pops up. Cheston Hadley again pops up. Joel Dahman, more on him in a moment. Kyle Stanley, Zach Johnson pops up. These guys, they're showing up all over the place. Putting average, here's where you start to get a little bit more volatility. Wes Bryan shows up here. He's the most expensive guy in that kind of upper tier. Losing strokes off the tee most weeks. These are very generous fairways. It might not hurt him this week. He could be a decent option. Again, a lot more volatility here. Zach Johnson pops up yet again. Bogey avoidance, you want this number to be low. So here we go. Again, a lot of similar names, right? A lot of similar names. Here's Dahman, DeChambeau, Zach Johnson, etc. You guys can read, but a lot of the similar names here. And the strokes gained approach, we see this one almost every week. A lot of the same names. So there's some weeks where these names are spread out. This is like a very tight core of players. I like that. Personally, I play a very tight core, so I'm not like this. This is right up my alley this week. I might win a GPP. Wink. Maybe not. Probably not. All right. Let's go to this new strokes gained thing because I think there's a lot to talk about. Again, a new tool. I got a couple of tabs down here. I don't even know where to start. So here's my main dashboard. I love this DraftKings points gain stat I've been going with. I love it, love it, love it. I'm looking at it from the start of the year, which is what we've kind of done historically. And you can see Bryson just continues to pop up here, averaging 24 DraftKings points over the field each week since January 1st. Joaquin Niemann, much less starts, I believe. 8 starts compared to Bryson's 13, but the third best player here. Nick Hardy's only played once, so not worried about that. Steve Stricker, in his 7 starts since January 1st on the PGA Tour, leading the field, or not leading the field here, but what, top 5. And you can see some of these names are really important. Let's see if we can find a name that might stand out here as kind of poor. Wes Bryan, very average player. No, now you're starting to get down into like your kind of crappy players. But here's the chart that goes along with this that also does salary too. So this line right here are the guys that I'll probably be targeting, right? So it's your DeChambeau, then it's your Molinari, Zach Johnson, Niemann, Stricker, Hadley. These are guys that are leading the tiers of pricing for DraftKings points. So if you look at the 10K range, Ryan Moore versus Joaquin Niemann is 6 points per tournament, 6 DraftKings points per tournament. So you can see the guys on the right here are outpacing the rest of their peers. So I'm going to have kind of this little outline of players. If you want to see the logs, so if you want to see, specifically what DeChambeau has done, so he has not lost DraftKings points to the field since the Valspar and only once since the Waste Management. Molinari's been pretty good too. He's had a lot more volatility, right? Like the 73 that he gained at the Quicken was pretty insane. Just to show you again, here's Joaquin Niemann. Really, really good for a guy who's only got like, a handful of starts on the PGA Tour. My homeboy, Brandon Harkins, who big time birdie maker, just kind of saves us every week. All right, so now this is kind of a new tool too. So you can pick any player, any tournament, any year, and kind of go from there. What I like to look at here, so just I'm doing total on the left here. So this is total for, let's go to the John Deere this year. Okay, so these are total. I should probably change these to average at some point, but I don't know. We'll see. There's sometimes it's not a big enough sample size, but so here's totals. So obviously guys who play it more have an opportunity to go lower, but you get a good idea here. On the right are the averages if you wanted to pick through a couple of players and find them. But what I've really liked to do is I've liked to look back at last week. So last week was the Greenbrier. And what I like to look at here is players who have gained strokes but lost them putting. We've talked about this kind of a lot, where putting is the most volatile of these stats here, where a guy can get very hot very quickly. So I want someone who is playing well otherwise, and then if their putter gets hot, great. If not, they might finish. Like Joel Dahmen's the perfect example here. I don't know what his finishing position was last week. He was hovering around the top 5 for a while. I don't know what he finished as. But gained strokes everywhere except on the green. That's a good sign. It means he's playing well. If his putter gets hot, even if he just picks up, even if he loses 1 stroke this week, is that enough to win? Is that enough to get a top 5? If he breaks even, that's great. Like, you know what I mean? So like, that's what I'm looking for. That's the most, this strokes gained putting is the one that can turn the most. Ryan Moore pops up here as well. Corey Connors insane, right? Corey Connors lost so many strokes on the greens last week. It's pretty brutal. So you can kind of see that's what I look for. And then you can click back and go to, previous weeks, right? Like the Quicken was one that we looked at. I think I tweeted this out last week. I'm not sure I actually showed this in the video, but you can see, and I just went last year. So you can see, or I'm sorry, this year, pardon me. Strokes gained total. I mentioned finding guys who lost strokes on the green. Palmer was there. Troy Merritt was there. I mean, not losing a whole ton, but you can kind of go the other way too, where, like Chesson Hadley gained 7 strokes on the greens. That's probably unrealistic to expect every single week. Steven Yeager, same thing. Like, that's why he found himself near the top of a leaderboard for the first time in a long time, because he gained so many strokes. That's not even, that's not possible every single week. It's unsustainable is what it is. Kyle Stanley gained strokes putting again. I'm going to convince myself to play him in like every single format. I know it. So that's what I'm trying to use this sheet for. And then if you want to go to this last tab here, which I just named great strokes gained 2, because I didn't have a great name for it. I just did it right before this. You can see here's Joel Dahmen, his last 24 rounds, really, really well against his peers. Gaining strokes in nearly every category. He's been a neutral putter. And then you can kind of flip through and, if you want to look at only like the last 6 weeks or something like that, it's kind of interesting to do that as well. So I suggest you play around with this. It's been very handy for me to find a lot of new trends, and I'm really loving it so far. And then we'll flip back to the cheat sheet here, and we'll look at the Vegas odds just one last time as we usually wrap up here. So who might be underpriced or overpriced? This is actually pretty decent pricing. 45, 50. I'd probably say Lingmerth is a little overpriced. Patrick Rogers might be a little overpriced because he's 60 to 1, and you can get guys that are cheaper 50 to 1, like Andrew Landry might be interesting, coming off an 8th at the Quicken. That might be a guy I might want to target. He withdrew, so don't worry about that. I would say, Keith Mitchell would be overpriced based on his Vegas odds. Ches Reavie would be a value, a guy who actually popped up on those tour stats quite a bit. 70 to 1 to win. His peers are 90 or 100 to 1. He's only $7,500. He might be a guy I find myself on. But the rest of it's pretty interesting. Oh, here's Nick Hardy. I got to find out what's going on with this guy, right? He played one tournament. I don't know when it was. I'll tweet something out if I can find it. Played here last year. Why is he 70 to 1 when the rest of his peers are 200? I'll tweet something out if I can find it, but that to me is interesting. Yeah, that's probably it. So there you go. Again, let me know what you guys think about these new tools. I'm literally creating them all the time. So I did this right before we started. I added a new sheet. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know what you're going to do this week and as we prepare for the Open Championship. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Tweet me. It's at DFS On Demand, or leave a comment below. See you.